I have with me Achal Ghatak from Cyber Media, which is one of the oldest and largest tech-focused media house, and they've got various titles, which is CIOL.com, which is primarily news, and it caters to the audience that you're trying to reach out to in India and APAC. They've got other titles including Data Quest and PC Quest and Voice and Data. They've been an extremely successful and a listed company, Achal, right? You guys are listed on the Indian Stock Exchange. Yeah, there you go. Achal, very happy to introduce to you Godard, the co-founder and CEO of G2, and with him Eric, an important, very important guy because he holds the revenue portfolio, if you will. So over to you guys. I think the focus of this conversation is more on trends and a helicopter view of where things are going as you talk about the changes that are sweeping the tech industry. And from that perspective, what should the Indian SaaS players be really looking at? Achal, over to you.
Hey, hi, good morning, Mr. Godard and Eric. So, as she said, I'm Achal Ghatak from Cyber Media, and it's an absolute pleasure to speak to you today. So, we are here to discuss your insights into the evolving B2B SaaS market, AI, cybersecurity, and based on the G2's latest report and your expertise. Shall we begin?
Yes, please. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so could you start by talking about G2 as the leading software marketplace? G2 has transformed how companies evaluate and purchase software. Could you tell us about G2's latest innovations and how you are continuing to shape this space?
Yes, and I'm Godard Abel, co-founder and CEO of G2. Nice to meet you, and we're excited to be here. We're in Bangalore all week, both to build our talent and obviously to be a big part of this rapidly growing market. So it's great to be here. And overall, G2, we are the number one global software marketplace, and we have over 90 million business buyers coming to G2 every year to discover and research the best business applications for their company. And it's really a global audience. And actually, APAC has been one of our fastest growing regions. Over 20% of our global traffic is already coming from the APAC region. And we serve, G2 serves 3,500 customers around the world. That includes many of the world's leading technology companies like AWS, Microsoft, Salesforce, as well as many of the disrupting startups, high growth companies around the world. And we're also really excited, already 10% of our customers are here in India and APAC. And it is actually our fastest growing region in the world already. And obviously, I think we're here because we do expect that to continue over the next decade, where I believe APAC will be our fastest growing region. And I think also what I told our team yesterday, I think as you know well, in India alone, there's 1.4 billion people. I heard 900 million are now online, already being very digital. And obviously also as the Indian economy continues to move up market, it will be more and more need also for software here for more automation. And obviously such an incredible talent hub, with more STEM graduates here in India than anywhere in the world. And so we're here at G2 both to tap into the incredible talent we can find, as well as the tremendous growth we see happening here in the software and AI market in India.
Thank you. That gives a great foundation. Also, what are your current focus area?
All right, in terms of innovation, it is AI. Mm-hmm. And at G2, we've launched our AI Monty. And AI Monty is an AI agent that first advises software buyers. And based on your business requirements, your needs, and if it were a CRO like Eric, traditionally on G2, you would have to know what categories to look in. But now AI Monty is an agent, kind of a virtual Accenture consultant, if you will, that could advise a CRO like Eric. Eric could just describe his business problems, like maybe we're trying to improve our sales forecasting. And then Monty asks more questions, like what's your company size, what industry are you in? And then Monty can make very bespoke recommendations using G2 data and AI. And so we're really excited, And we see, adoption of Monty has more than doubled since the beginning of the year. So we're advising software buyers. And now we've also launched an AI Monty agent for software sellers. And they can train our Monty agent to answer all the questions. And we do have, as I mentioned, 3,500 software vendor customers, but they can also train AI Monty on their sales FAQs. And Monty can really be kind of a virtual SDR, BDR, answer all the buyers' questions, walk them down the funnel, and set up a demo, or in some cases even close a deal. And so we're really excited, both seller and our buyer Monty agent, and that we can really start to facilitate agent to agent online software buying. And so that's innovation we're really excited about and we're really investing in.
All right, thanks. So could you share some insights into G2's financial performance or revenue growth in recent years and in Indian market? Are there any specific trends or sectors in India that you have contributed to this success?
Yeah, and globally we're a private company. We have disclosed we're over 100 million in revenue run right now globally. And as I mentioned, APAC and India is our fastest growing market. We're not disclosing the kind of exact growth rates by region, but it is definitely our fastest growing market. And we do expect that to continue over the next 5 or 10 years. And I think our dream for G2 is to build a public scale global company. And I guess you've seen, I think now in the US, public company scale probably means getting to 500 million. And it's also part of the reason I'm so excited to have Eric join us. He led Upwork, global talent marketplace, on a similar journey from private company to public company status. And so that's our big goal. And like I said, we do see India especially continuing to be our fastest growing country and region, and to really be a material part of that, reaching public company scale one day.
To double click a little bit on the trends specific in, I would say, the Indian market, but APAC in general I think it's maximizing the kind of globalization of everything. And so the idea of building a domestic business versus a global business used to be really challenging. And I think with the rise of the cloud and the access of talent distributed everywhere, watching organizations go from local to global instantly is one of the really big driving factors that we see specifically here in India, where I'm not thinking about my ICP just locally. I'm thinking about those unique problems that I can solve globally, and how not only the rise of the cloud, but platforms like G2 allow me to build my brand through customer voice and actually build trust and transparency is one of the, I think, big kind of market forces that are helping Indian companies win, specifically on G2.
Any specific sector you are focusing on?
I think the categories of G2 that are growing fastest, one is AI software, and I think last year we saw over 40% growth in the number of AI software listings on G2. So it's by far the fastest growing category, both globally and here in India. And I think the other sector that we're really excited about is security. And because as you know, there's increasing threats. Obviously, companies here in India and around the world are all looking for better security solutions. And so those are probably the two areas on G2 also growing the fastest, are AI and security.
Okay. So also, let's focus on the G2's latest report, Providing Value in the Age of AI. It reveals that while a majority of buyers anticipate software budgets increasing, it's become tougher for companies to win and retain those customers. What factors do you think are driving this shift in buyer behavior?
I think what we have seen, globally is, companies have been starting to consolidate, focus their tech stacks. And I think also, we've seen the US, I think there has been, after, the tremendous COVID boom, the zero interest rate environment in the US, where I think companies were buying technology very quickly in 2021, where they had to also, to adapt to COVID, they had to start doing everything digitally. But I do think, the last couple of years, we've seen buyers, CFOs starting to pull that back, and in some cases think maybe they bought too many SaaS apps. So we do see a trend towards bigger companies critically looking at their stack and seeing could they consolidate. And we're also seeing more deliberate decision making. So I think sales cycles are increasing, and I think increasingly software buyers now require C-level approval. Certainly if it's a sales technology CRO like Eric plus a CFO. And so I think we're seeing bigger buying groups and hence slower sales cycles, probably across the global industry.
The one thing I would add to that is probably the importance of integrations. And so I think the world of where software buyers are looking for point solutions.
Yes, so Eric, you were adding to it.
So kind of adding to Godard's comments around the importance of like integration for software sellers, as I think the idea of like point solution, products are really challenging for buyers today. They want to work with software providers that integrate with their workflow, with their data strategy, and it's becoming an increasing requirement. And so as a software seller, your integration strategy and how you integrate with other ecosystems and data strategies is increasingly becoming more important.
All right. So do they need to shift strategies to align with these changing expectations?
Yes, I think vendors definitely need to align. And I think the other thing we saw in our buyer behavior report is there's more focus on ROI. So I think customers expecting rapid ROI, typically within 6 months. And so I do think all software vendors have to ensure that they're delivering rapid ROI to their customers, because the budgets are being scrutinized more. So the buyer really has to believe they're going to get a rapid ROI on any new software investment.
Okay. Some of the biggest startup success stories for India are in the B2B SaaS space, both by valuation, exits, and IPOs. Where do you think the Indian B2B SaaS market is headed next, and what do these companies need to do for the next big leap in Make in India, make for the world momentum in this building up?
And long term, and I think that's also why we're investing in region. We do believe that more and more global SaaS and AI software leaders will emerge from India. And obviously there are great, success stories now like Freshworks and ChargeBee that have really become global market leaders in customer software and in billing software. And we do expect more to emerge. And I think there was a bit of a slowdown in venture funding. I think also in India the last 2 years that we saw, but we do see that starting to come back. And I do believe over the next 5 or 10 years, given all the talent here, and also now we're doing a G2 live event here in Bangalore tomorrow, where we're gathering the Indian SaaS leader, SaaS entrepreneur community. And we've had, I think, almost 1,200 people sign up because I think there's so much excitement, so much energy to build now SaaS global leaders here from India. And I think what Freshworks and ChargeBee have done well is really build trusted global brands. And I think that is still hard for a vendor from India. How do they get software buyers in the US and in Europe to trust them? How do they build that trusted brand? Make sure they're included on the short list and that they have the opportunities. And that's also where G2 has played a big role. I know the founder of Freshworks, Girish, but they also invested early in their customer voice or customer reviews on G2, and it really helped them build a trusted brand. Because I think also what the software buyers in the US want, if they're going to partner with any vendor or vendor from India, they want trusted peer reviews, trusted peer insights to help them make a confident buying decision. And I think that's also where we're really excited at G2 to provide trusted brand validation by customer voice to these Indian SaaS vendors so that they can start to grow and sell in the US and in Europe and really build a trusted global brand. And I do think probably the strength of Indian entrepreneurs traditionally has probably been more on the product side than the technology side. But I think to really win globally, it's equally about building your brand, building your trusted brand, as well as the sales and marketing execution. And that's where, on the go-to-market side, I think where there's big opportunity for the SaaS, emerging SaaS companies from India to keep learning and to keep growing. And that's what we're going to be sharing at G2 Live tomorrow. We have a lot of great content on how they can leverage G2, but also on go-to-market, global brand building, global growth, so that we can help.
Okay, interesting. So
The one thing I would add too,
right. Tell me.
I was just going to say, like, to your point on, and as Godard mentioned, like being bullish on, I think, software growth, like specific to the Indian economy, like all the demographics and like, I would say structural changes are pointing to it. And so if you think about the rise of the cloud and globalization, it's made the world a lot smaller, you know, in some ways. And so there's outside of time zones, but there's a ton of speed advantages that didn't exist. If you add that into like the population growth, but more importantly, the percentage of highly educated population growth, specific to STEM and engineering, you have all of these like market forces coming together, platforms like G2 that allow you to accelerate that go-to-market. And so, as Godard mentioned, I think the future is really bright, you know, based on a lot of like really important signals coming together at the same time.
Okay, so this momentum requires Indian SaaS companies to innovate differently compared to their global counterparts, right?
Well, I think yes and no. I mean, I think the core technologies, and like I said, I think that's where India's SaaS entrepreneurs are really strong, like building really compelling products and functionality quickly. And I think, you know, the additional challenge, at least today, the biggest software markets, you know, the most revenue you can generate is in the US and in Europe. And so I think the challenge is, you know, how do Indian emerging SaaS companies, how do they build global brands, right? How do they get buyers in the US and in Europe to trust them? And obviously, you know, I think the leaders that emerged from India, Chargebee, Freshworks, they figured that out. But I think that's probably more the challenge for most entrepreneurs here. You know, how do they build the trusted brand in the, you know, in the US and in Europe, which are still the largest, you know, revenue opportunities for most software vendors.
All right. On the topic of innovation and growth, what are some of the striking differences you have noticed in software investment trends in India compared to the rest of the world? And what factors do you think are shaping these unique behaviors in Indian market?
I think one, you know, interesting fact in our buyer behavior survey last year at G2, but we saw 16% higher trust, you know, in AI amongst Indian and APAC software buyers. So I actually think there's a higher receptiveness to digital and to AI. And we're even noticing it here. I think India is also ahead, for example, in digital mobile payments infrastructure, you know, where I think almost everything here now is done by mobile and by digital. And frankly, that's ahead of the US. And so I think the willingness and adoption of digital payments, of AI, I think in some ways is ahead of the US. And I think that's really exciting. And I'd say the other area where India is ahead is just in producing STEM grads. And also for G2, you know, we're building a big talent hub here. And we just hired our global head of data science, Abdul, here in Bangalore. Because frankly, we were having a hard time finding the right talent in the US. And so now we're building out a whole data science and engineering team here, as well as 2 of our core engineering squads to build our global products. We've just recruited here in Bangalore. So I think that's the other big advantage that India has in innovation is, especially for AI, it's a new field, but you still need a lot of data scientists, a lot of engineers to fine tune these models, to make sure you have clean data. And so I think those are all, I think, areas, you know, where India is, I think, is in a lot of ways ahead, you know, of where we are in the US.
Well, I think it's capitalizing on the kind of that talent strategy. While venture funding is in some ways depressed globally, there are, you know, significant investments that are made in AI specifically. And if you think about the kind of talent density in APAC and those specific skill sets, like I think that provides an advantage for entrepreneurs here locally.
Interesting. As we can see, AI is clearly the flavor of the season. So how do you think the hype will eventually settle? And when can we expect true performance measures to emerge? Do you foresee a standard industry benchmark for measuring ROI on AI innovations?
Yeah, we're at G2, we're trying to create that benchmark. So what we've done to all of our software reviews where vendors are adding AI, we're adding 3 questions about AI, both asking them what use cases are they using AI to automate, And secondly, are they getting ROI? And also what are the challenges they're facing? So we're rapidly gathering that real customer feedback. And one interesting data point from our recent buyers survey, that this was earlier in 2024, but 77% of people that have bought AI software are actually getting a positive ROI. And one category where that's very true is like AI writing assistants. And obviously as a journalist, I don't know if you use AI assistants, but we're seeing a tremendous trend, for example, in marketing. But on G2 already, there's, I think, 487 AI writing assistants, listed. And I think the leader in that category right now is Grammarly, but their customers are reporting a significant ROI in terms of improving the productivity of their writers, especially for marketing use cases. And so I think that's just one example of a use case that's working well. And has AI been overhyped? Maybe, but I also think, especially if you look at the tech giants, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta, they're investing $50 billion a year to create this tremendous AI infrastructure. Obviously, all the data centers, LLMs, many of which, like Llama, are actually available. Also then to developers and startups like G2, as well as any business in the world. So I do think, and I've been in tech for 25 years, it reminds me more when the internet first emerged, in the late 90s, there was this tremendous .com boom. And then there was a pullback, in the early 2000s, and some people even said Amazon was going to go bankrupt. But ultimately, I think all of that hype around the internet has been realized. And I do think AI is going to be as big, if not bigger, in terms of, ultimately transforming so many industries, so many productivity. May there be some overhype and some short-term pullback. I think that's possible. But I'm also very bullish that, another decade, that AI agents, just like Monty, that we're building at G2, or last week we were at the Dreamforce conference, where Mark Benioff, their co-founder, CEO, launched, which is a way for...
Right.
Go ahead.
Is there any framework G2 or other SaaS companies are already experimenting with to quantify AI ROI?
Well, we're doing it based on user feedback, user reviews, which we do believe works at scale, because once we have, for example, for Salesforce now, we're starting to capture reviews of Agentforce. And I think within the next couple of months, we'll likely have thousands of reviewers reporting their success or lack thereof with this new Agentforce platform. And so we do believe, serving the business users in real time will be the best way to really assess that ROI at scale.
So a lot of AI adoption is still under regulatory scrutiny, which tends to slow down its widespread application. Do you believe trust issues will continue to impede investment in AI, and how do you see this playing out in India versus the rest of the world?
And I'm probably less of an expert in AI regulation in India, but to me, like I said, I think our data shows us where there's actually higher trust in AI, I'd say in general in Indian society. And it does seem, we haven't seen AI held back here by regulation. I'd also say in the US, it's not being held back by regulation. Obviously there's tremendous innovation. I think Europe has created, I think, the first regulation, the European AI Act. And so I think there, maybe it is constraining investment to some degree. But at least, and I think in the US, you can see, I think last year there were record amounts of venture capital invested, I think over 20 billion in AI startups. And as I mentioned, the leading tech giants invested 50 billion in AI infrastructure. So at least to date, we haven't seen regulation slowing down investment or innovation.
In some ways, it's like you can't put the genie back in the bottle. If you think about it, like to your question on the hype of AI, and similar to Godard, I've been in the tech space my entire career, and we talk about the third wave or like the fourth industrial revolution. I think the compounding effects of AI, like it's still early days, but zooming from like large language models and like answering, answering bots to this like autonomous AI agent world. It's not really a question of if, it's more of like when are organizations going to embrace that as a part of their both strategy of how they build products and how they serve their customers. But it's foundational and probably one of the biggest shifts that I've seen in my career.
All right. Noted. So on the subject of trust, data breaches and related lawsuits have been a harsh reality for the enterprises. From your perspective, what are some of the top trends you are seeing in cybersecurity and data privacy, and how much weight do enterprises give to these aspects when choosing vendors?
And we are seeing security concerns be more and more critical to software buyers. And so I think also on G2, we're adding security insights on every profile of G2. And what our recent buyer behavior report showed that 97% of global software buyers are now involving a security stakeholder during the buying process. And so that's 97%. So almost every company, and probably the 3% might be tiny startups that don't yet have a security person. But so we are seeing security being a key stakeholder in any software selection and software deployment. And also, I think the buyers reported 81% consider a vendor's history with breaches or security incidents to be critical in evaluating solutions. And I was saying in the US, we just had that, I think it was a global incident with CrowdStrike, where they took down Delta and so much global travel. So we also saw the downside. So, and I imagine that 81%, that was 3 months ago. I think after that CrowdStrike incident, I wouldn't be surprised if that goes up to 97% as well. And 83% agree that a software provider's data security certifications are critical to them. So now we're actually adding that right on their G2 profile with partners, so you can see which security certifications, obviously things like ISO 9701 and other certifications, which ones they already meet. And I do think that's only going to become more important in this world, right? Because there are increasingly bad actors. So we do think security, is already, well, I think one of the most, if not the most critical, purchasing criterion. And I think we believe that's only going to increase.
Yeah, I think it's, if you think about in the enterprise and how organizations manage risk and moving from, I would say, like on-prem data to data's now everywhere and sharing in a lot of different places. I think security, not just like questionnaires, but compliance and governance are going to be common requests from buyers that are looking to bring in new technology. It's table stakes, I think, for enterprise B2B software providers of how they help organizations, specifically enterprise, manage risk and this idea of that data is now everywhere.
And I think a couple more facts from our buyer survey that build on what Eric's saying. 75% of software buyers are already saying that security is an extremely important selection criterion. As I said, 97% is to check the box, but 75% is extremely important in really helping drive their decision. And also, it's interesting, only 56% are confident in the security features of the software they currently use. And I do think software stacks have grown so much, and where large enterprises now are all using over 1,000 different apps. And so I think there's a lot of fear, with CISOs, CIOs, CTOs, that they're not confident. Only 56% have confidence that they have sufficient security features in their software. And so we do believe this is going to be an area that businesses are going to keep focusing on to make sure that all their apps have the right security.
Right. I imagine this is a critical rise of AI and a huge amount of data being processed. So are there any particular security innovations you find especially promising?
I do think, now with AI, I think it does increase the stress, because certainly things like phishing attacks are just getting more sophisticated and higher in scale. And so, but frankly, we see that lifting, almost all the security categories, across the board. I think there are now some new tools, particularly around AI analytics And I think there's interesting new vendors emerging, also analyzing AI and trying to detect deep fakes and I think new threats that are being created by AI.
I think personally, I'm both curious, but like you see it on the rise of where I think both AI and just like a security opportunities around, I would say like ID verification and validation as the world, becomes more connected. And I think a lot of large organizations are trying to help solve that just to continue to build trust in these global marketplaces. But I think that's one area where security is innovating really quick around global ID validation and verification.
Exactly. Like in India, we have this Aadhaar that is linked to all our identification. So that helps in security. So looking ahead, what do you think will be the top 3 challenges facing the B2B SaaS market in India over the next 2 or 3 years? And how will these challenges influence venture capital interest, especially in a year where private investment have been relatively slow?
I think the number one challenge right now for startups has, I think the last couple of years, there has been a bit of a pullback in software investments. Right? In big companies, a lot of them consolidating their stacks more versus growing them. So I do think finding the revenue growth,
Right.
and I think it's still the number one metric that startups, and we at G2 we raised $257 million, and we became a unicorn at a $1.1 billion valuation. And I think what's been more challenging for us, and we serve 3,500 software vendor customers, but I think growth has been the challenge. And you can also see it in the big public companies, companies like Salesforce or ZoomInfo. Many of them have slowed down to less than 10% annual revenue growth. And so I think that's a challenge, because for venture capitalists to be really bullish, and I remember 2020, 21, and that initial boom, digital boom post-COVID, right? Companies were growing 4x year over year. And obviously investors, VCs love funding that. And so I think that is the number one challenge. How do startups find that global growth, especially the top line growth that VCs really want to see to make investments? And I think we were looking at the numbers. I mean, I think also in India, venture capital investment pulled back in late 2022 and 23. But it does look like this year it's starting to trend up again. And then I think the one area VCs clearly are betting on the most is AI, even without the revenue proof. But I think for broader SaaS to start attracting more funding again, I think our number one challenge as a sector is how do we all deliver more top line growth? And that's certainly what we'll be talking about at G2 Live tomorrow.
We see a lot of, and I get excited about it, but like focus areas from software entrepreneurs about getting back to this idea of like power positions. If you think over the last 5 years, a lot of organizations took on a lot of other, I would say, use cases as part of their software delivery to be able to compete. If you think about this idea of like what is very unique to you that is really important to the customer that you can defend and prove ROI all the time, I think that's where opportunities emerge, being really great at a specific challenge and problem that is unique to the customer that you're really good at. Every customer that I talk to isn't necessarily, while they're looking for integrated solutions, they're looking at consolidation. It's really hard to stand out right now. And I think the organizations that are not only just giving funding, but a success are really narrow and really great at that original kind of use case. And my guess is that the new players that emerge will get back to that kind of power position strategy versus where the last few years, everyone was kind of adding everything, to their platform. And I don't necessarily know if that's what buyers want anymore.
All right. I think that comes to the end of this interview. Thank you so much, both of you. And is there anything else you'd like to add to this?
Now we're very excited to be here. Hopefully next year you could join us at G2 Live here in Bangalore. But we're excited to, like I said, keep investing in our talent and in the grow globally. So we're excited to be here. And like I said, next year we'd love to have you here in person.
Yeah, definitely. Would love to. Thank you.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Eric. Speak
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye.